Congratulations! You have made the correct decision to watch the first episode of a series of videos dedicated to discovering how good each starter Pokemon actually is.
Great! What do I win?
Nothing! Now get out!
No! Wait! Stay! For these videos, I'll be playing through the various Pokemon games relying solely on whichever starter I've selected in each and every battle. As a kid, this is basically how I played the game anyway. A few random Pokemon would sit in my party to use whatever HM move I needed, while my over-level starter would sweep every trainer and gym leader I came across. This isn't exactly how I'll be playing these runs, however, since pretty much any Pokemon would be able to crush the game if a high enough level. I'm going to do my best to keep my starter to as reasonable a level as possible, but I'm also not going to beat my head against the wall just to find out how low a level it is technically possible to win at. This is supposed to be a relatively casual Pokemon experience, so if I lose once or twice, I'll just go level up a couple of times and give it another go. Just really quick here, to try and keep these videos a little shorter and more easily digestible, I won't be including any Rival or Giovanni fights outside of the gym and champion fights, so sorry if you were expecting to see those. I did try this fight at level 12 and 13, but wasn't able to get past the Geodude, so I decided to come back at 14 to match his Onix's level. And while Geodude's ability to tank physical attacks is incredibly high, the same can't be said when it comes to special attacks, and that is Charmander's bread and butter. This fight, for some reason, Brock hyper fixates on Defense Curl, which doesn't actually do anything to lower the damage he's taking from Ember here, and we're able to get to Onix without taking any damage ourselves. And you can see Onix loves to use the move Bide, and that's great for us, because if we outspeed, we can simply use Growl on those turns, which means Bide won't do anything, and when he actually decides to go for Tackle, that will do way less to us. And really the biggest reason Brock poses less of a threat to Charmander than people might think is that neither of his Pokemon actually know a Rock or Ground move. So since Brock has no stab moves that would also be super effective here, we're able to get past him pretty easily without needing to overlevel at all. So remember a few seconds ago when I said we wouldn't be looking at any rival fights?
Look at this photograph!
The reason I'm showing this particular rival fight is because this one can be tricky if Pidgeotto lands with Sand Attack, and I was a little worried that since I didn't do any of the optional battles through Mount Moon, I wouldn't be a high enough level to win here, and that would be a big problem since I definitely can't beat Misty at this level, and I can't get to the Nugget Bridge and the northern routes to level up until I beat the rival. I do get past the Pidgeotto here without taking a Sand Attack, but it still does good damage to us because even though we managed to get the burn here, it immediately crits, which not only deals increased damage, but it ignores the attack drop from burn. Abra doesn't know any attacking moves, so that's cake. And Red Attack could be a problem for us with Hyper Fang, but we managed to crit with Ember, knock it out in one shot, and we're on to Squirtle. We're low on health going into Squirtle, but right here, he's going to miss with Tackle, that's huge. We're going to tank a Water Gun here, that's huge. We're going to crit with Scratch, that's huge. He could take us out with Water Gun, but he goes for a Tackle, and we manage to knock him out. This Rocket fight seems kind of inconsequential, but he's going to provide us with a pretty nice power spike here. Now we have TM28, which is Dig. Now Dig may not sound too crazy for Charmeleon, but it's actually nuts to have this move so early in the game. In modern Pokemon games, I think it's 60 base power, but in Gen 1 it's 100 base power. So it's basically Earthquake with extra steps, and this is how we're going to get past Misty and Surge. So by now I've gone up north to clear the Nugget Bridge as well as the trainers before Bill's house. I've tried this fight at lower levels, but unsurprisingly, even with Dig at our disposal, I had to overlevel to get to the point where I was able to one-shot Staryu like I do here, because Starmie is kind of ridiculously strong for this early on. Lucky for us, it only uses Water Gun, no Bubble Beams, and that X-Defend it used there could have actually been a problem for us, but we get another clutch crit, and since crits ignore all stat changes, I finally take it out. Nothing too interesting happens on the SSN, so we can go ahead and jump straight to Surge. And yeah, spoiler alert, we absolutely stomp him. This is our first time beating a gym leader on the first try, but it won't be the last, and that is largely due to having to overlevel to 26 for Misty. And Surge's Raichu is only 24, so even after only fighting one extra trainer on the SSN to acquire the TM for Body Slam, we're sitting at level 29. We sweep Surge, one-shotting all of his Pokemon. I think we one-shot Raichu here with or without the crit. Easy peasy. Yeah, on to the next one. I decided to fight Erica before going through the game corner, even though I'm not actually sure how well the fight is going to go at first, because even with the type advantage, Erica is not as free as she seems. Ember is the only fire-type move we have until level 46, and the Poison Powder Wrap Strap from Victory Bell is absolutely brutal, and it probably would have gotten us with it if not for the crit there. Next we have Tangela, and it doesn't look like it here, but it actually does have pretty decent defense and special stats, but it really just doesn't have the moves to be any kind of threat. Next up's her Vile Plume, and I'm actually kind of surprised at how little its Petal Dance does here, even though we do resist it. Another big time crit takes Vile Plume down. If you're wondering why we're actually getting so many crits, is because in Gen 1, critical hits are calculated off of the Pokemon's base speed stat. So while in the modern games it's something like 4 to 6-ish% across all Pokemon, in Gen 1 it does vary, and Charmeleon's crit chance is about 15%. And now we see the man himself, the Zard. I'm expecting this fight to go pretty smoothly overall. We dodged the smokescreen here, and that's nice because lowered accuracy is going to be really annoying for this fight. Coughing tanks the dig, which is surprising to me. Muck, on the other hand, is pretty beefy, so I'm not really expecting to one-shot him. We don't. He goes for the disable. That fails. We have Slash now, and that's a guaranteed crit in these games. Now we see the second coughing come out. Dig again. That's the one-shot we were looking for. Now his last Pokemon is the Weezing. This can be a dangerous one. We go for Dig, trying to bait out the self-destruct. We don't get it. Now we get the self-destruct, and that almost takes us out. That was a little closer than I was expecting the fight to be, honestly. I am happy, however, that Koga didn't use the X attack that he will use sometimes before self-destructing, because there's no way we survive that. Next is Sabrina. She's regarded as one of the more difficult gym leaders in the game, and yeah, I'd say that she usually is, but her Pokemon are very similar levels to Koga's, and we have since gone through Sylph Company and have leveled up even more. You see we have Earthquake now, that's replaced Dig, but I'm still going to go for Slash here since it should be doing more, being 70 base power and a guaranteed crit. Next is Mr. Mime. I accidentally opened the item menu here, and that kind of fries my brain for a second. Anyways, we Slash. Mr. Mime's going to go for Light Screen. That's not actually going to do anything to help against Slash or any other physical attacks, and we take it down. Now we got Venomoth coming out, and you see me kind of pause here for a second. I guess I was considering if I should use Ember or not, but I think the only way Ember does more than Slash here is if it does get a crit. I decide against it. We take it down pretty easily, and next comes out her ace, Alakazam. Now Alakazam obviously has immense special, but not so much for its defense. We almost one-shot it. It uses Reflect, but it's too little, too late, and add another first try win to the pile. Now for the 7th gym leader, Blaine. He recommends us bringing Burn Heal to fight him, but Charizard can't actually be burned.
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badge.
Anyway, so this Blaine fight is going to be giving some pretty big Lieutenant Surge vibes. I'm going to speed this up just because it's literally just mashing Earthquake. Growlithe, Ponyta, and Rapidash all just need one. We're finally able to get rid of Ember for Flamethrower. Arcanine has some bulk, so he needs a couple of Earthquakes, but yeah, this was a pretty brain-dead fight. Now we head straight to the 8th and final gym leader, Giovanni. You can see we're finally being passed up level-wise. That grinding to beat Misty really helped carry us through the middle part of this run, but it's not a problem since there isn't much Giovanni can really do to us. His Nidoking and Rhydon could technically do some decent damage with attacks like Thrash or Stomp, but Giovanni just picks attacks randomly, or he'll use Guard Spec, which prevents his stats from being lowered, and half of Rhydon's moves are one-hit KO moves, and I'm not sure if it's a bug or a feature, but in Gen 1 those Oko moves can't hit a Pokemon with a higher speed stat, which we have. I'm switching between Earthquake, Slash, and Flamethrower here primarily to preserve power points in Earthquake since I haven't healed from the Blaine fight, but also just to break up the monotony of spamming a single attack. Easy win here, and we're on to the last leg of the game. So despite me saying I wouldn't be showing rival fights, we're actually going to look at yet another rival fight.
I knew you was lying. I knew you was lying, man.
Okay, so this is a rival fight that I'll probably show through all videos going through Gen 1 starters, because this is where we see what will end up being our rival's full team for the champion fight, with the only differences being that Rhyhorn, Execute, and Growlithe will obviously evolve. Pidgeot doesn't really have the moveset to be much of a threat. Rhyhorn has the bulk to tank an Earthquake, but being a first stage Pokemon, it doesn't have the power to be able to do anything. Growlithe and Execute are predictably both one-shots. Alakazam is able to withstand a Slash, but we get lucky and it goes for Reflect and not Psychic. In modern Pokemon, moves like Reflect and Light Screen increase the entire party's ability to tank physical and special attacks respectively for 5 turns. However, in Gen 1, these moves only affect the Pokemon that use them, and they are active the entire time the Pokemon is fighting, whether it's 5 turns or 50. Blastoise is really the only problem we could have, but it's a pretty big one, especially since we're so underleveled. Fighting Blastoise here is basically playing a slot machine, since it will only go for Water-type attacks, which sounds obvious, but it knows 2 Water-type attacks, one being Hydro Pump, but the second is our potential saving grace, Withdraw. Now another lesson on Gen 1 mechanics. Enemies will always go for whichever move is super effective, which on the surface makes sense, but the way the games are programmed, your enemies go, "It Fire-type, me use Water move." But it doesn't take into account whether or not the move actually does any damage, and we do get majorly lucky here as Blastoise goes for Withdraw after Withdraw, which is why I'm using Slash since critical hits will ignore the defense increase. It does go for Hydro Pump at the end, which might actually be able to one-shot me, but we'll never know, because it misses and we take it out. I head straight to Lorelei just to see what happens, and yeah, there's no shot at this low a level. I pump Charizard up with rare candies and try again, but it still feels like we're a little too far off, so I grind a few more levels. And what's probably more important is that you see I went and got the TM for Swords Dance, so Earthquake and Body Slam are doing way more damage. Something else you'll notice is ice attacks are super effective against Charizard despite it being a fire type. Gen 1 is the only generation where fire does not resist ice, and because of Charizard's flying secondary typing, ice moves hit it with super effective damage. Cloyster is a defensive beast, so it takes a little longer to kill. Lapras is also bulky, and we just tank the Hydro Pump, and we're on to Bruno. Bruno is not only the weakest Elite Four member by far, but he might also be the weakest story fight in the game overall. I use a couple Swords Dance just to guarantee that all of his Pokemon are one-shots. I use Body Slam on Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee to preserve Earthquake power points, but there isn't much to say about this fight. Agatha is also typically considered pretty weak, but she can be a lot trickier than Bruno if her first Gengar manages to put you to sleep or confuse you and gets off a couple of Nightshades. Fortunately, she's another case of a trainer who just attacks randomly, and since we're pretty far past her level, she doesn't pose any problems for us. Now we're facing the final Elite Four member, Lance, and unlike the previous two, he's going to actually be kind of a pain. His Gyarados is an absolute wall for Charizard. We're in a catch-22 here since we can't do enough damage to it without a couple of Swords Dances, but we also can't tank enough hits to use them. You see me kind of pause here while I think about what the next move should be. I come back a few levels higher, I get a couple of Swords Dances off, and no! A crit! You've heard me say crits ignore stat changes, and yeah, that includes when we buff our attack, so a crit here actually does way less damage than a normal hit would. I do knock out Gyarados and one-shot the Dragonairs, but I know I'm not getting past Aerodactyl, and we don't. Again, you see me just kind of sit here as the rage in my soul begins to swell. We're done messing around with Lance. We come back at 70 this time. We do our Swords Dancing, and the power of God and anime is clearly on our side here, with 2 Hydro Pump misses, and now the sweep is on. Aerodactyl eats a Flamethrower, but we get past that, and no! A crit on the Dragonite, and a crit Hyper Beam could end us here, but he uses Barrier and one more Body Slam, and now all that's left is the champion. We fought the mini version of this team once already, and we were pretty successful. We set up a Swords Dance against Pidgeot. I consider going for another one, but I'm thinking this is all we're going to need. It does manage to survive a Body Slam, but not a second. Alakazam is too squishy for Earthquake. We're able to one-shot the relatively tanky Rhydon and Arcanine. Exeggutor tanks a Flamethrower, but Barrage is just a terrible attack. We're on to Blastoise here, and Hydro Pump and Blizzard can do major damage to us if they crit. Blizzard hits, but we survive, and we are the new Pokemon League champion. Charizard enters the Hall of Fame at level 72, which I don't think is really all that bad since he's often considered, and honestly, despite being my favorite Gen 1 starter, probably is the worst of the 3 for playing through the game. I do think there's a bit of a misunderstanding about Charizard though. He might not be as good as Blastoise or Venusaur for a playthrough, but I do think he's still a good Pokemon for the game, especially for a run like this, since he excels at where it's most important in my opinion. He has good attack and special stats, and since the special stat in Gen 1 covers the special attack and defense, he's deceptively bulky. He also has good speed, which helps with not only going first more often than not, but like we discussed earlier, the higher the speed, the higher the crit chance. And that did kind of backfire on us a couple of times against the Elite Four there, but it also helped us to win a number of fights that we may otherwise not have. The main thing holding Charizard back, though, is the fact that it's a fire type, and fire type just isn't very good for the Kanto region. And when the starter is weak in the early game, like Charmander is, since it has a type disadvantage to both of the first two gyms, it makes it feel that much worse, since at that point in the game, you're relying heavily on your starter, even in a normal playthrough, since you simply don't have as many options to deal with the problems like you would at a later part in the game. I'll be giving a quote-unquote official ranking after I get the remaining starters finished, but for now I'm going to preemptively rank Charizard at 3. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed the video, why not get in on the ground floor of the channel and like and subscribe? There's more coming in the way of obviously starter solo runs and more general Pokemon content. See you next time.